we're going to go ahead and begin. I hope everyone can hear me and see my screen. Good morning or good afternoon, educators. We usually do our webinars at 10 a.m., but we're at 2 today. Thank you so much for joining us for our webinar with the Region 13 Accountability Team. They are here as our guest speakers for Accountability 201, Distinction Designations, and Campus and District Comparison Groups. So we have a lot of great information today. We're going to go ahead and get started. So the first slide is just a really quick orientation to the Zoom platform, which we use for our webinars. If you can see my screen and you can hear me, you should be all set. This is how you're able to check your audio. And then you can, we do have a slide at the end that we're going to save some time that you can ask questions, and we'll provide some answers. And if we don't have those, we'll get back to you, because we are recording this webinar and we will share it with all of our attendees, even those folks that are not able to join live. So we will definitely have time for questions, and you can also add anything that you'd like to in the chat box. That is where the Q&A, you can input those and it looks like that. And then in the top right corner, you're able to change your screen size to make it larger or smaller depending on your preference. So just a couple of quick updates and some information on Texas OnCourse. If you have not visited our website, we have a lot of great resources on there at texasoncourse.org. Like I said, we'll follow up with some webinar content and the accountability information that we covered today. We will summarize for you. And if you're not really that familiar with Texas OnCourse, we are a state-funded initiative, and we provide free curriculum and professional development on the topics of college and career readiness for campuses and districts. So this is a special webinar that we made, we created specifically for the subscribers of the College and Career Strategist, which is a new newsletter that we write with the Region 13 Accountability Team, as well as approval from the Texas Education Agency. So we've seen a lot of really wonderful growth from the Strategist. We have about 600 subscribers. You can also look at our website for some other newsletters that we have as well for educators, and this one is specific for administrators, and written in collaboration with TEA and also Region 13. So just a quick update on who's using Texas OnCourse. We're still a fairly new organization, housed out of the University of Texas at Austin. But right now we have almost 14,000 educators that have logged into the Academy. We have over 3,100 schools in over 900 districts across the state that are using Texas OnCourse either through the professional development in the Academy or implementing our middle school curriculum guide in various ways across the state. So just to briefly go over our agenda today, we will have just some brief introductions of myself and the guest speakers from Region 13. So you get to hear a little bit about that background. And then we'll provide an overview of the A through F accountability system itself and all of the components. And then we'll talk a little bit about the distinction designations and how that impacts your campus and district ratings. And then we have a couple of really valuable tools. One of them is a College and Career Military Readiness Tracking tool that has been created by Region 13. And so we'll show you that, as well as some different reporting features that we have to offer. And then we'll have some time for question and answer and wrap up. And so we have set aside from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. I don't know that we'll take that long for our webinar, but we have provided an hour. So my name is Laura Guggen, and I'm Assistant Director of Program Implementation here at Texas OnCourse. My background is in college and career readiness in large urban school districts, and also as a high school counselor, and a long time ago as an elementary school counselor as well. Tisha.
Hi, Laura. Thanks for having us today from Region 13. My name is Tisha Kolick. I have worked at elementary, middle, high school, DAP, and central office to support college and career readiness, attendance, kind of other duties as assigned, and counselors. I'm in my 3rd year at Region 13 supporting counselors as well as being a member of the A through F accountability team.
And hi, I'm Melinda Marquez. I am the coordinator for accountability and school improvement at Region 13. I am a former campus principal, and my main role now is to present accountability, the new A through F system, to everyone, and to support those campuses that are in need of improvement due to accountability ratings.
Okay, we're going to get started with the A through F accountability overview.
All right, Melinda Marquez here. So we'll just have a brief legislative context here. We know that our campuses and districts received A through F letter grades, and last year, August 15th, was the first year our campuses received letter grades. The reason behind the letter grades is all because of House Bill 22 and the 85th Texas legislature. The commissioner was told that he would give campuses and districts a grade for their performance when it comes to accountability. When we talk about those grades, we know the letter grades are A through F, but it's also important to see what the labels are associated with those grades. So you can see that normally where the biggest surprise that we get is the letter grade of a C. That is considered acceptable performance, and that's the normal scaled score of 70 to 79. So campuses that are D or F are those campuses that are in need of improvement or unacceptable performance. There are 3 domains when you're calculating an overall rating. The first domain is student achievement, the second domain is school progress, and the third domain is closing the gaps. Now, it's important to note that each one of those domains receive a letter grade. TEA, in order to calculate that overall rating, TEA takes the best of or the better of student achievement or school progress, and that's weighted at 70% of the overall grade. And then closing the gaps is weighted at 30%. They take those 2 numbers, and then you have an overall letter grade. So campuses and districts actually receive 4 domain letter grades. So let's look at the first domain, student achievement. Before we dive into looking at exactly what's involved in student achievement, it's really important that we look at these performance level designations, or the PLDs. Most people understand that there is does not meet, approaches, meets, and masters. But what I'm seeing is that a lot of people haven't seen the definition tied to these PLDs. So if we look at the first one, does not meet. Does not meet means that the child would be unlikely to succeed in the next grade or course without significant or ongoing academic intervention. Approaches. Now, we know that approaches in the state of Texas means that the student, quote unquote, passed that STAAR test. But if you look at the definition tied to it, that means that the student is likely to succeed with targeted academic intervention. So it's important that a student who receives approaches on their STAAR test continues to get that targeted academic intervention in the next grade. Meets, that means the student has a high likelihood of success, but it also means that that student still may need some short-term targeted academic intervention. And then masters means that the students are expected to succeed in that next grade or course.
Okay, so Tisha Kulik here talking about the next set of slides. I always find this interesting and like to share it with our audience because it's the first time really that in my career where I've seen higher ed and K through 12 work together and kind of merge some of the goals we're working on. So if you're familiar with the 60 by 30 initiative that the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board put out, that's simply the goal that by 2030, at least 60% of Texans ages 25 to 34 will have a certificate or degree. Typically, this is our middle school, upper middle school, freshman, underclassmen age group. And when we look at our accountability system for K-12, we see that in order to meet the goal for 60% to have something beyond the high school diploma, they decided that students needed to either do approaches, meets, or masters. They had to score that level on their reading or math assessment in order to be able to have the potential to earn formal education after their high school diploma. So what the state said was, if we have 60% of a campus or a district that will acquire or earn approaches, meets, or masters, then that is going to be defined as an A. And it aligns to our statewide goal of 60 by 30. To kind of do a deeper dive into the 60 by 30, really they have 4 goals they're working on. And so the first we've kind of covered in the 60 by 30, where at least 60% of Texans aged 25 to 34 will have a certificate or degree. Economists have said that in order for us to maintain economic prosperity across the state, we have to have this level of education for our workforce, for the jobs that we'll need to continue to have economic stability. The second goal was completion, and we know that's another struggle that our students face, and so that's completing what they begin, and that includes a certificate all the way through PhD. The third goal was marketable skills, and they've defined what those are to be employable in the workforce. And the fourth goal is another barrier that many of our students face, and that's student debt. And so the goal that our state is working on is that undergraduate student loan debt will not exceed 60% of first-year wages for graduates of Texas public institutions. So again, we have this in another format that's 25 to ages 34 in the year 2030. We'll have something beyond the high school diploma so that our state can continue to prosper. Okay, so if we're looking at the student achievement domain, elementary schools, STAAR scores are 100% of this first domain that we're talking about. That's what they have in order to be calculated for the elementary rating. Middle school is also going to be STAAR scores at 100% of this domain score. High school, we have a couple of different variables that will be considered. So STAAR scores are 40% of the domain score. CCMR, which we're going to do a deeper dive into the next few slides, is 40% of the high school domain score. And then the graduation rate is 20% of the domain score. We'll go into depth a little bit more in future slides. For your STAAR score, it's important to understand that 1 point is given for each percentage of assessment that's at approaches, meets, or masters. So it kind of goes back to our slide where we said 60%. And so it's important to note that if a student scores at approaches, they're included. Percentage of assessments at meets is included, and percentage of assessments at masters is included. And that total is then divided by 3.
And if you notice that percentage of assessments at approaches grade level or above, so that means that percentage actually includes the meets and the masters. So if a student receives masters, then they are counted 3 times in that calculation.
Which can be confusing.
It can be, yes.
So this is a good slide to reference when you're being mindful for your calculations. Okay, so we're going to jump right into our CCMR indicators. And we have 3 categories that our CCMR indicators fall. We have college ready, career ready, and military ready. So college ready includes our AP scores, our TSI criteria, where our SAT, ACT, TSIA, and college prep course completion. Remember, we're focusing on reading and math. Dual credit, which can be 9 hours or more in any subject, or 3 hours in English and math. Earning an associate's degree, like many of our early college high schools offer students, or completing an on-ramps course and earning college credit. Military ready is defined for accountability as the intent to enlist in the United States Armed Forces. It's important to note that right now our reserved branches are not included as a CCMR indicator. So if you're marking those students that are graduating from your campuses, it's going to be active duty. Career ready includes these bullets: earning an industry-based certification, a CTE coherent sequence with an improved industry-based certificate that's aligned We'll come back to that one because that's at 1/2 point credit. So that's a unique feature of this indicator. Our students who receive special education services and they graduate with their completed IEP and workforce readiness. And so these are our PEAMS graduation codes of 0405, 54, and 55. Earning a level 1 or level 2 certificate, and we have a slide, we'll go into depth about that, or graduating under an advanced degree plan and being identified as a current special education student. So let's talk more about these. A minute. Okay, so first we're going to do CTE and industry-based certifications. Sometimes you hear industry-based certifications with our famous acronym as IBC. They're referring to this content. Our industry-based certification list was expanded, and so that expanded list of IBCs will affect accountability ratings in August of 2021. We've included the hyperlink so you can review that expanded list and see if that's something that your school district or high school campus is able to offer for your students. Additionally, the list of CTE courses aligned with an industry-based certification includes 19 additional courses from the original list that came out with the accountability manual. And again, if you complete the course sequencing but not the IBC, that's going to default to a 1/2 credit. We'll talk more about that in a minute. And to view the updated list of those 19 courses, we have the hyperlink there with that 4th bullet. Oh, sorry, went too far. Okay, for our CTE coherent sequence, for 2018 and 19, CTE coherent sequence graduates who completed and received credit for at least one course aligned earned a 1/2 point. So let's talk about that. That was a default CCMR indicator. So if a student didn't earn any other CCMR indicator on any other of the other categories, then they would earn 1/2 point. This is our only indicator that earns less than a point, and that's why it's the default. For 2020 and 2021, the CTE coherent sequence graduates who complete and receive credit for a pathway of courses will earn 1/2 point. And for 2022 and beyond, only graduates who earned the IBC will earn 1 point. So they are phasing out for accountability the students that complete the pathway of courses. And so that in 2022, it's going to be required for the accountability indicator point to be earning the IBC at the end of their coursework. On-ramps is another option for students to earn a CCMR indicator, and many of our campuses across the state have offered this to our students. It's an innovative dual enrollment program with UT Austin. All on-ramps courses are part of the university's core curriculum and are guaranteed to transfer to any other public college or university. So this is a little bit more, it's unique because sometimes our dual credit courses are not always guaranteed to transfer. It depends on the accepting university, but on-ramps does have that guarantee. The on-ramps program provides the agency with the data, so the on-ramps indicator is not submitted through PEAMS. And so when you're doing your snapshot dates in the summer snapshot, it's actually not being pulled from the campus level PEAMS. On-ramps has an MOU now with the performance reporting division at TEA, so they send that information for all of the campuses across the high school directly to TEA. CCMR credit will be awarded for successful course completion. So a unique feature of on-ramps is even when a student completes a course with on-ramps, they don't automatically accept the college credit. The student has that ability to decide what they would like to do with the college credit. What performance reporting has decided was when a student successfully completes the course, regardless if they accept the college credit, the campus will still be given credit for completing this indicator. Level 1 and 2 certificates was added, and so this is provided by an Institute of Higher Education. Level 1 and Level 2 certificates are not awarded at the campus level. These are separate from IBCs. And we have found that across the state, the Level 1 and Level 2 certificate opportunities look different. Many of these opportunities are awarded by our community colleges, And they are when a student completes a program consisting of at least 15 and no more than 42 semester credit hours. Oftentimes, level 1 and 2 certificates are relevant to the community and the workforce and industries that are hiring in that community. Level 2 certificates are awarded for completing a program of at least 30, but not more than 51 semester credit hours. Okay, so our students receiving special education services, when they graduate under an advanced degree plan, they are identified in PEIMS as a student receiving special education services. They can now earn a CCMR indicator. This is any student who's identified, if you have older students who have stayed beyond 4 years in high school, very few of these across the state right now, who are on the former older recommended or distinguished achievement plan. Most of you are going to have students in your building receiving special education services who can now meet this indicator if they graduate above foundation only. Remember, that's foundation with an endorsement or foundation with the DLA or distinguished level of achievement. Okay, this is also included with our CCMR indicators, also for students who receive special education services, but they are going to graduate because they have completed their IEP, and this is an and statement, and they've demonstrated workforce readiness. And so this is a great chart to have handy. We have the Texas Administrative Code citation on the slide for you to go into the different definitions, but this is when you're going to have graduation type 0405 or 5455 for your graduation codes for these students. Here's another slide I was mentioning earlier. This is just another visual to show you which year the CTE coherent sequence coursework transition will occur. We discussed this earlier. Okay, so the methodology for calculating CCMR for a high school is 1 point is given for each annual graduate. And so a question we get a lot of times is, if our students earn more than one indicator, how is that included? They only get 1 point. So if they met the dual credit hours and the AP score, just one of those is going to be included, except for our CTE coherent sequence graduates. Remember earlier we're talking about those would be our default to a ½ point. Again, this is our only indicator that awards 1/2 point. And this would be for your seniors that are graduating that did not earn any other CCMR indicators. So your formula is right here. So here's our divisor line. Number of graduates who accomplish any one of the CCMR indicators divided by the number of graduates in the class. Okay, so now we're moving on to the second domain, and Melinda's going to take over for school progress.
All right, so second domain is school progress, and this domain looks specifically at growth. There's two aspects to the school progress domain. The first aspect is Part A, academic growth, and then the second piece to this is Part B, which is relative performance. Once again, TEA takes the best of academic growth or relative performance. So let's look specifically at academic growth. Academic growth looks at students or STAAR scores with a STAAR progress measure. So districts and campuses can earn credit for results that maintain proficiency or meet growth expectations on STAAR. Let's look at what this looks like with this visual. So let's say we have a 3rd grade student. That year, that student had approaches on their STAAR test. In 4th grade, that student received a meets, or even they went up here for approaches. So that student, if they received from approaches to meets, that means they exceeded their growth measure, so they received 1 point. If they go from you can go from approaches to approaches and still grow. And so you went to your expected growth measure. So you receive a point there as well. If a student received approaches 1 year and then goes straight across and still receives approaches at the same level, then that student has maintained proficiency, and that student would earn ½ point. Now, if a student goes from approaches to does not meet, then that means that student, it says limited, but limited or no growth then 0 points will be awarded. So let's look at Part B, relative performance. For elementary and middle schools, the school progress Part B evaluates that overall student performance on the STAAR component for student achievement, which is the first domain, with similar percentages of economically disadvantaged students. And this is as reported in PEIMS in your October snapshot. For high schools and K-12 campuses and districts, Part B evaluates an average of the student achievement STAAR component and those CCMR results, or the component, compared to, again, to districts or campuses with a similar percentage of economically disadvantaged students. AEA campuses are not evaluated on school progress, and that is just because of the small number of campuses available for comparison. So let's look at that in a visual form. So on this graph, you can see that this axis is the average of the STAAR and CCMR results for all students. And this axis is the percentage of economically disadvantaged students. Now, according to research, a campus with fewer economically disadvantaged students on average has higher levels of student achievement, and a campus with more economically disadvantaged students on average tends to have lower levels of student achievement. So TEA created a graph that looks like this. And what you can see here is that, let's say we're looking at this campus here, right here. This campus has a relatively low percentage of economically disadvantaged students, and they scored pretty well on STAAR and the average for STAAR and CCMR results. But if we go straight over to the exact same average or score that this campus scored, they have a higher percentage of economically disadvantaged students, so they would receive an A, whereas this campus would have received a D, because it all depends on the percentage of economically disadvantaged students. So now let's look at that closing the gaps, and this is the third domain. This domain is created to ensure educational equity. This domain, what TEA has done with this domain is aligned accountability systems. So the USDE, we actually have a federal accountability system, and that is through ESSA, and TEA has combined the two. So this domain is where the USDE, the ESSA piece comes into play. In the past, there's been two separate accountability systems, a state accountability system and a federal accountability system. The A through F system has combined those into the closing the gaps domain. In the closing the gaps domain, there's 14 student groups. We have these 7 student groups. And then we also, in addition to these, we have our economically disadvantaged, current special education, former special education students, current and monitored English learners are in one group, and then 2 groups that are relatively new, which are continuously enrolled and non-continuously enrolled. Now, remember I said the federal accountability system is tied into to the state in closing the gaps. So the ones that are starred, the groups that are starred here are state groups, and those wouldn't be counted for your federal. There's also 4 components. So we have the 14 student groups and 4 components to closing the gaps. The first component is the STAAR performance status. So that's just the academic achievement. But the key point here is that we are looking specifically at the MEETS grade level or above in English language arts, reading, and math. So not approaches as the state has. The state says approaches is passing, but the federal said, no, we're not going to accept approaches at passing MEETS. We need to look at the MEETS level. So this component specifically looks at the students who are at the MEETS level. Then our next component is growth or graduation. And this depends on the campus type. So if you do not have a graduation rate, then your campus would be measured under academic growth. And this is just that school progress part A in reading and math. And then if your campus does have a graduating class, then it will be rated under the federal graduation status. And this is for high schools, K-12s, and districts. If for some reason there's a high school, say it's a campus that's maybe a 9-11 campus and they're just building up and they don't have a graduation, then they'll use the academic growth status. One important piece here is that this graduation status is the federal graduation status, not the state graduation. So as Tisha was talking about, there is a graduation component to the student achievement domain, but that is not the same component as this federal graduation. The state component has many more exemptions than the federal graduation status does. The next component is your English language proficiency. And the English language proficiency, you're measuring the L's progress towards English language proficiency. And the way they do that is they use TELPAS results for this. So they're comparing 1 year of TELPAS to the next year of TELPAS. People ask me, how much does TELPAS weigh? And it's now embedded into our accountability system, and that is correct. This is where TELPAS lives in our state accountability. The last component is school quality or student success. Just like growth or graduation, this depends on campus type. So for elementary schools and middle schools, we're looking at that STAAR component of the student achievement domain. But for high schools, K-12s, and districts, we are looking at college, career, and military readiness. So those CCMR indicators. Now, the closing the gaps, again, is ensuring educational equity. So each student group has an achievement target set by TEA based on historical scores. And each student group must hit those targets. And all of those targets put together, the percent of students that meet those targets, that gives you your overall domain score. Now, closing the gaps is the most confusing domain. We actually do really specific trainings at Region 13 just on closing the gaps, how to read the reports, looking at those academic targets, and figuring out what the targets are for each group, and the targets shift from each component as well. So if you'd like more information on closing the gaps, please feel free to reach out. So let's look at calculating that overall rating. We showed you this at the beginning of this presentation, but just to remind you that TEA takes the better of student achievement or school progress, weights that at 70%, and then takes closing the gaps, and that domain is weighted at 30%, and that gives you your overall letter grade. So TEA, the Performance Reporting Division, has great weekly updates. They send them out every Friday. I read them every week, and I'm always learning something new. They always have a Q&A. They'll talk about TAPR. They talk about anything that's released. It's really easy to sign up. We have some links here for you that you can go, and if you just click sign up for updates, and you can have those sent to you as well. All right, we are going to roll into distinction designations. So distinction designations are an additional piece to the accountability system. And this is for campuses. It's like a different certification or certificate that campuses can get based on certain criteria. Only campuses that have an A, B, C, or D are eligible for distinction designations. So if you're a campus or a district with an overall F rating, you would not be eligible to receive a distinction designation. For 2019, those distinction designations are awarded in these areas. We have for academic achievement, and there's four can be awarded in academic achievement for each of those major subject areas. So English, language arts, reading, math, science, and social studies. And notice those are campus-only distinction designations. There's also a top 25% distinction designation, and that can be with comparative academic growth or comparative closing the gaps. So really focusing in on growth and focusing in on those student groups and closing the gaps. And once again, those are two campus distinction designations. And the last distinction designation that can be awarded is something called post-secondary. Now this is a district can receive a post-secondary readiness distinction designation, and a campus can receive that as well. So let's look at each of these individually. Before we do that, let's look at campus comparison groups. So each campus is assigned to a unique comparison group, which has other Texas schools that are most similar to it. Campuses are identified by school type, so elementary, and then you're grouped with 40 other campuses from anywhere in the state of Texas that are most similar to your campus in grade level served, size, percentage of students who are economically disadvantaged, mobility rate, percentage of English learners, percentage of students receiving special education services, and percentage of students enrolled in early college high school. I have a link here that takes you to the campus comparison groups. Those groups are actually released earlier than the accountability ratings come out. So the 2020 campus comparison groups should be released within the next couple of months. So let's look at those distinction designations. So the first one are the academic distinction designations, and they call those AADDs because of course we love those acronyms and we're going to continue to use them. So who is eligible? Once again, any campus that's an F would not be eligible. And performance is only at the all student groups. So we're not breaking this down by student groups. These are the assessments that are used: STAAR, AP or IB, SAT, and or ACT. Now, I'll also get the question of attendance. How is attendance calculated into accountability? So for your accountability score itself, attendance is not calculated in, but it is used for distinction designations. So let's look specifically at English language arts, that academic achievement in English language arts and reading. So these are the different components that we're looking at: attendance rate, accelerated student progress in ELA reading. We're looking at the master's level for any of those reading tests, the STAAR test or the writing STAAR tests, and the English 1 and English 2. Look at the AP or IB examination participation for ELA, and then also the results, the SAT or ACT participation, and the average SAT score for reading and writing, and the average ACT score for ELA, and then last but not least, the advanced or dual credit course completion rate. So these are all of the indicators for your English language arts reading academic achievement distinction designation. So for mathematics, it's very similar. We're looking at the attendance rate, the student progress, so always looking at the growth piece, looking at that master's level, grade level for those STAAR tests, and then the Algebra 1 8th grade participation, Algebra 1 performance at the master's, the AP IB examination, once again, participation and results, the SAT ACT participation, and then the average SAT score for math and the average ACT score for math, and then again, the advanced or dual credit course completion rate for mathematics. Now for science, there's fewer indicators. You're looking at the attendance rate, those master's levels for grade 5 and 8, and biology, looking at that participation for AP IB science, and of course the results, the average ACT score for science, and then once again, the advanced or dual credit course completion rate. Social studies, very similar. Attendance rate, master's level, AP IB, participation, results, and advanced or dual credit course completion rate. Now let's look at the top 25%, the comparative academic growth. So I talked to you about those, your campus comparison groups, and this distinction designation is specifically given to any campus that's ranked in the top 25% or the first quartile of campuses in its campus comparison group. So really, if you're in the top 10 of your campus, of your group of 40, then you could earn a distinction designation. So campuses are arranged in descending order, looking specifically at that school progress Part A scaled score. And if you're within that top quartile, then you earn a distinction designation for school progress. And it's the exact same for closing the gaps. You look at that campus comparison group. Once again, if you're in the top quartile, then you can earn a distinction designation for closing the gaps. And I'm going to show you some of the distinction designation reports so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Now, the last distinction designation is post-secondary readiness. Once again, this is districts and campus can receive this. And districts, but only districts that have multi-campuses in there. For any single campus district that shares the exact same 2019 performance data, the campus is only eligible to earn that post-secondary readiness, but the district would not be able to, or the charter school. So the indicators for post-secondary readiness is the percent of STAAR results at the meets grade level or above. Once again, percentage of grade 3 through 8 results at meets grade level or above in both reading and math. The 4-year longitudinal graduation rate, 4-year longitudinal graduation plan rate, TSI criteria, CCMR ready graduates, SAT, ACT participation, and then AP, IB examination participation, any subject, and the CTE coherent sequence graduates. And from elementary and middle school, the methodology for your post-secondary readiness is that the elementary and middle schools must be in the top quartile for 50% or more of the indicators. And high schools must be in the top quartile for 33%. So let's look at what that looks like. So this is an example chart of a post-secondary readiness campus calculation. So this is for Beta High School. These are the different indicators that were listed on that sheet, and these are the percentages that Beta High School received. So for STAAR meets, they were in the second quartile, which means they were probably 11 through 20 on the list. Here's their graduation rate, once again in the second quartile, but their graduation plan rate, they were in the first quartile along with these other indicators here. And then here they were in the third quartile and the fourth quartile. And so this tells you, if they're in the first quartile. So 4 out of 8 of these indicators were in quartile 1, which is greater than that 33%. So Beta High School would earn a post-secondary readiness distinction designation. Now for districts, the district must have at least a 55% of those campuses in the top quartile. So here's an example of the district. So we have the different high schools, middle schools, and elementary. These are the percentage. These are the number of indicators, and this is the maximum indicators that are possible. And if we look here, 25, they earned 25 out of 36 of those indicators. And that means that they had 69%, which is greater than the 55%. So that sample district would earn a post-secondary readiness distinction designation. Now on the distinction designation reports, there's various labels. It's either distinction earned, no distinction earned, or the campus or district was not eligible for that distinction. So let me take you out and take you to some distinction designation reports. Okay, here we are. I'm going to take you to a campus, maybe, there, at McCallum High School. I need to get down to the bottom. There it goes. Can you click on distinction designation? So we're going to click here on distinction designation reports and click view report. So if we look here, so this is the first distinction designation, and this is the one in English language arts or reading. So this campus received quartile 1 and only 3 of 10 indicators. So they did not earn a distinction for the English language arts. This campus earned 3 of 9 indicators here, and that's just at that 33%. So they did earn a distinction for mathematics. Sorry, I'm trying to learn this computer. Here we go. This is the distinction designation for science. They didn't earn any of the indicators, so they did not earn one for science. Did not earn one for social studies. And here are those campus comparison groups. And if you notice, McCallum High School is grouped with all these other high schools across the state of Texas and that are most similar to them. So they have some in Frisco, Leander, Midlothian, Humble, Grapevine. So all of these campuses are the most similar to McCallum High School in the state of Texas. For academic growth, their scaled score was an 89. And so the top person here was Tomball Memorial High School. They scored a 92. But since McCallum is in the top quartile, they did earn a distinction designation for growth. And for closing the gaps, it's the same process. Closing the gaps, this campus earned a 94. And so they're in the top quartile, so they earned a distinction designation here as well. As a campus principal, I used this, or even my teachers looked at it, I had my counselors look at it, everyone looked at this to see where we landed on this page. And if we weren't at the top, then we contacted some of these top campuses to see what systems and processes they have in place, to see if some of those we could transfer and learn from them and implement at our campus. We actually did that and it worked. And we were able to implement some great systems and processes on our campus in order to bring up our scores. This is the post-secondary readiness. They were in the top quartile for only one piece, so they did not earn a distinction designation there. So those reports are available publicly for any school out there. And you can find those from that link on this page as well. So this is our Region 13 accountability team. Feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions about accountability. You can email us, call us, and we're always available and always happy to answer any questions. We do have a great website. Tisha is actually going to take you to the resources pages on that website to talk to you about the CCMR tracking tool.
Okay, so a lot of our districts were wanting to be mindful of which students had earned CCMR indicators and which students they would continue to work with. And so when you go to our, sorry about that, when you go to our Region 13 accountability website, you see it's accountability.esc13.net. We have a resources link right here. We have other useful things as well, like the videos, upcoming workshops, but our resources that are free for you to use are on this page. Our CCMR tracking tool will be the first resource you see. When you download it, you'll download it to your desktop, and so you'll open it up. Let me kind of get my, okay, now we're good. Give me just a minute. Okay, so the how-to section at the bottom, we have 3 tabs created for you to be helpful. And so when you have your how-to tab open, make this a little bit bigger. We also included some instructions briefly here at the top. And then I wanted to include some further additional information that we find in Texas Education Code or on the TE website, or even the Texas Administration Code, so that you could have that as a reference. We get a lot of questions about the college prep courses that we must offer for English and math, the industry-based certification list, graduating for our special ed. You know, a lot of you are familiar with 89-1070 in Texas Administration Code, and then our level 1 and level 2 certificate. We uploaded a great resource here from our Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board to give you more information. Here's our example of what it could look like. I'm going to show you the 3rd tab, which is what you will use. We recommend that you download from your student information system your senior cohort list. We do have many schools that are tracking their, usually many freshmen haven't earned a CCMR indicator, but for sure your juniors and even your sophomores, you can begin tracking what indicator they've earned. So we go to the example section here. It's interactive and we wanted to have some colors. So our color coding is red, means the student has not met the full definition of the CCMR indicator. I'll go further into that in just a minute. Blue means they did. They met the full indicator. And when you see students who have no color, they're still white. They're not blue or red. And we go all the way across horizontally, you see that they've yet to have one checked. So let's talk about students who might be coded red. So for instance, if you look at how we built this indicator for the tracker, it requires both reading and math when we talk about TSI. And so that's this whole block right here in dark navy. So this particular student, student A, they met the score for TSI reading. And if you're like me, sometimes you can't remember what those scores are. So if you hover over each box, I've given you a cheat sheet. So remember, TSI reading is any score greater than or equal to 351. Student A met that. But they did not meet it for math with their TSI, SAT, ACT, and they have yet to complete their college prep course. And so you can see they are red. Now let's say that in spring semester, their senior year, I enroll them in the college prep math course because they haven't met the math score with their assessments. They complete the course, they pass it. I put an X in this box. I get out of the box and you see that the color changed to blue. So that's the example of, for this particular indicator that requires both reading and math. Our other indicators, so we'll go down here to student I, who has yet to meet an indicator. Let's say they earned their associate's degree. And so we're going to go ahead and mark here that they've met that indicator. It's a single indicator, and see their name turn to blue. And so as you mark these boxes, it'll change these colors over here with how we have formulated the Excel spreadsheet. So we're hopeful that this will help you support your students before they graduate in earning a CCMR indicator. As you have students who have yet to earn their CCMR indicators, you will have your specific programs and interventions and support to help them achieve this before they graduate from your campus. Again, when you download the spreadsheet to your desktop, the whole file will download just like you're seeing on our screen. And you'll work in the third tab there at the end on the right for your seniors of 2020. When you download it, just like any other Excel spreadsheet, you could change a few of the settings. And so just be mindful of that. If I were working in a high school campus right now, I would just change this tab to have seniors 2020 and then seniors 2021, and maybe have some different workbooks saved to the desktop. You can also put this in your Google shared drive. So if you have multiple counselors at your high school campus or your administrators would like to see the CCMR tracking of their different cohorts in their building, you can do that as well. We have found that most of our districts have used the strategy where they will pull their TSI report, their SAT and ACT, and do that first, and then continue to work off of that. Most of our campuses that have lots of seniors will not look at, so if student F here has already met an indicator, they won't continue to see what other indicators they've met. In the interest of time and being efficient, once the student has met one indicator, then you know that you will meet that criteria for your accountability score. If you have any questions about the CCMR tracker, please let us know. You had our contact information on the previous accountability slide.
Great, thank you, Tisha, and thank you, Melinda. We're gonna pop back to, we have about just over 5 minutes left. So we wanna give some time just to go over a couple of updates and announcements. That's the website for the resources page for Region 13's accountability. That we went over, and we will go ahead and open it up right now. We have a few minutes, and if you have a question, the attendees are muted right now, but you can certainly add in a question or a comment into the checkbox, and I'll read it out loud, and we'll see who's best to probably answer that question. And if we don't have the response, we can take a look and send that response to you via email. So go ahead and take a couple minutes, and I know we covered a lot of information, and A through F is a complicated accountability system for sure, and there's a lot of information. So go ahead and add any questions, and we'll stick around for a couple of minutes. So go ahead and ask any questions if you think of any. I just wanted to make a couple of announcements. We have a couple of more webinars that are available to anyone that uses Texas OnCourse or brand new people as well. Speaking of college credit and dual credit programs, on February 4th, our monthly webinar is Earning College Credit in High School. So we will have some guest speakers that can talk about dual credit, as well as Kyle Stipe from the On-Ramps program to talk a little bit about how our dual enrollment program with On-Ramps works as well. And then on March 3rd, our audience for this monthly webinar is middle school group, Making Careers Matter in Middle School. We're going to highlight some great resources from the middle school curriculum guide and some lessons and career exploration tools that we've built for the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders that you all work with. That's our link right there to the monthly webinar series. We also post the recordings on YouTube as well as on our site. And we refresh our webinar calendar every year to really align with the things that you all are doing with your middle school and your high school students. And then also, this is just my contact. If you're interested in learning anything else about how Texas OnCourse can support CCMR components in your district, that is my email right there, laura.gugan@austin.utexas.edu. And you can contact me with anything else or any other questions that you may have. Thank you all so much, and special thanks to our guest speakers from Region 13, Melinda Marquez and Tisha Kolick. They've taken the time out of their busy schedules to give us some really fantastic A through F content, and so we really appreciate working with them. And stay tuned for a follow-up email with the recording and all of the links we talked about, as well as the resources we mentioned. So thank you all so much and have a wonderful day.